It's Waxing Lyrical, baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical with Mains and Dutts. I'm your host, Mains, and my colleague, a man who never lies on his doctor's note. It's Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
Quite simply, the most bizarre 2 days in terms of news in the NFL during the whole time I've been watching it, and it's not even close.
Which is, if we think about it, unbelievable that there's that many things that have happened during your NFL watching life, and this was the bizarrest, but it has been bizarre, horrific, offensive, and everywhere in between, really. If you don't mind me saying, obviously we talk Aaron Rodgers, we talk Henry Ruggs. We won't really be talking about either of those in that kind of context, I don't think. I've got a fantasy thing that kind of relates to the Aaron Rodgers thing, but not necessarily related to it. And Henry Ruggs can not earn paychecks in jails for a long, long time, as far as I'm concerned. This week, plugged into the mains, we've got a few stories to brief. We're going to look at an all-in move from the Rams. We're going to look at an injury in the AFC South, and good coaches doing good coaching things. Then obviously we're going to talk about fancy darlings and fancy losers. Well, let's be frank. Last few weeks, Neil is on absolute fire, like straight fire.
Needed to happen.
And then we will move on to our fantasy predictions, bound to go wrong, at the last part of the show. So without further ado, let us plug into the mains. There's one thing you could never say about the Los Angeles Rams under Les Snead, and that's that they are resting on their laurels. All in for 400, please.
Yeah, they are the ultimate, 19, hit me, 20, hit me. Rich Eisen summed it up perfectly, because obviously Les Snead is married to Cara Henderson, who I believe she used to be on-air talent for the NFL Network.
And before that, she was at ESPN.
She was. So Rich Eisen said that he knows Les Snead fairly well. And he says he walks normally, despite the fact that there are church bells down there.
I saw that on the internet as well. Yeah, totally agree. And for those who are unaware, I think it's for a second and a third next year. The Rams traded for Von Miller because, they only had Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey and needed someone to be in the middle, so decided to get a 9-time Pro Bowler to fit said deal. They have given up draft picks. However, they're only paying him the league minimum of about $900,000 because the Broncos are paying the rest. As I said, you can't, I wanted to talk about Aaron Rodgers in a different context, so we'll do it here, is that, the Rams get Matthew Stafford and are like, we're all in. And the reason that Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to be in Green Bay anymore is because he's constantly believed they would never roll in with him.
Yeah, as I say, the Rams take a hit on 20, whereas the Packers stick on 12. And that's pretty much the extent of my card knowledge. Another short-term thing that we should take from this trade is this means there's not a chance in hell Vic Fangio is head coach of the Denver Broncos next year, because apparently he said to George Payton, just do whatever you got to do for the roster. And I think it's one of those just we'll eat whatever. Oh, we're having pizza from here. And I think it was okay. Just do what you can.
We're having Dr. Aker, so we're having German pizza. But isn't pizza Italian?
So it's just do what you can with the roster. Okay, I've traded away Von Miller. Oh, thanks.
When that happened, did you not? Are you not surprised? Are you surprised? Because I know I am. That Teddy Bridgewater isn't a New Orleans Saint.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised. The problem with the Saints is, and this is, just changing subject ever so slightly, one of the reasons why they couldn't trade for Odell Beckham was because the Browns just said, we're not paying any of this salary. You take him, you take it. And the Browns don't have the Saints don't have the cap space. So presumably they couldn't fit Bridgewater in under their cap.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is why, they're going to have to go with Taysom or Trevor Siemian. It's weird because it's not weird. This is what the Rams do. I think the Rams saw what happened the last time they had a first-round pick and said, "Oh, we're not doing that again." And then obviously decided, do you know what? Why don't we just shove the draft and just have 2 weeks off? The whole weekend off. We'll all go to Sean's house.
Is there a better job to be than a college scout for the Rams? Like just sitting in your house smoking cigars, I assume, because you got nowhere to be.
Backup quarterback, sub goalie, scout for the Rams. The best money for nothing jobs in sports. It's an indication that the Rams realise they have a window. And you have to applaud this because they don't want to spend the 2 years of drafting someone, developing and saying, yeah, they'll be fine. They have said, no, he's a proven player, so have some of our draft picks that 50% of them will fail or will not live up to expectation. So bullshit, we'd rather have a sure thing. You have to applaud that. I mean, granted, it's going to catch up. The bill will eventually become due, but if they win 2 Super Bowls before that bill comes due, who cares?
Well, this is the thing, right? I'm sure in 2027, when we're doing this show, we'll be laughing about how rubbish the Rams are because they've got no players or whatever, but it's not 2027 now, so I'm sure they're fine with the situation.
Yeah, it's a problem for their future selves. And as I always say, when it comes to problems with your future self, just remember, they do exactly the same to you.
Correct. Now, let's move on. Future self, i.e., for one moment, the Tennessee Titans were the best team in the AFC. They're still the best team in the AFC in terms of record. However, they've lost their most valuable player, maybe not best. It's running back Derrick Henry, 6 to 10 weeks. I like the way now all NFL injuries have got a 4-week window of coming back. Very strange, never seen that before. Of 6 to 10 weeks with a fractured foot.
Ultimately, we were all proved right. No, obviously, jokes aside, Derrick Henry is a freak. He's an alien, and his unreal workload, the type of running back that he was. People like to think, well, he's bound to break down originally. Yeah, but this isn't one of those injuries that you get from usage. I think someone stood on him and broke his foot. That doesn't happen an awful lot. This, of course, is the problem you have when you base your entire team's identity on running the ball in 2021. Their depth is pathetic. I mean, their backup running back has 7 carries this season.
I was going to say, and I believe that Derrick Henry has 220.
Yeah. Derrick Henry is going to be leading the NFL in carries for a good 4 weeks. And ultimately, it's one of those, they're going to want to run the ball. That's why they brought in Adrian Peterson. But Peterson's not going to get 30 touches a game. So, maybe they'll run the ball, but we'll finally get do you know what, let's just give A.J. Brown 15 targets a game. People have been crying for it.
But this is the thing that Ben Solak on the Ringer NFL shows proposed instead of trying to get Adrian Peterson. Why don't you try and get another wide receiver and just go balls to the wall, 11 personnel, 3 wides, and do it that way? I don't think they're going to do that, by the way. But no. It is a different approach. But in the kind of we were proven right on Derrick Henry, quote unquote, it looks like we're about to be proven right on AJ Brown as well.
Well, we all wanted 200 targets for AJ Brown. Then they signed Julio Jones, and we were all deadly disappointed. And but maybe Julio was in on the gag the whole time. It's like, no, do you know what? I want 200 targets for AJ Brown. I want to see it. So we'll find out. I mean, obviously the big problem that Tennessee have is, yes, they did run the ball an awful lot, and they did have an efficient quarterback, and they do have a beast wide receiver. The defense is still shite, and obviously if you run the ball, you can make the game shorter. They don't have that option now. So that defense could get shown up. I know a lot of people are probably thinking, well, 6 to 10 weeks, we've got a 3-game lead in the division. We just need to hold serve till then. Yeah, but your defense is shite. You can't hold serve with a shite defense. Adrian Peterson and Jerry McNichols running the ball.
But you can if you play in a division that has the Houston Texans and the Jacksonville Jaguars, surely.
Well, when when the smart decision is to throw stupid pick sixes rather than take a safety, then I think you're in a good division. You don't need your out of this world running back for too long.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. I'm not 100% sure without Derrick Henry, I would want to play the Rams, the Saints, and the Patriots in 3 of my next 4 games. Still to play the Steelers, the 49ers, and the Dolphins as well.
It wouldn't be my first choice.
So, yeah, there we go. Speaking of the Steelers, Neil, we're in group chats, and that's fine. And they're hot take zones, as we all well know, right? And as people of this show know, my hot take on coaches has been for, I don't know, a decade, that Mike McCarthy is gash, and was held up by his quarterback. In our text group, we have queried, I'm going to say, the finishing coaching style of Messrs. Mike Tomlin and Sean Payton, i.e., if you win that many games that often, surely you should win more Super Bowls. And I think that's a fair criticism. But I also think that Sean Payton and Mike Tomlin this week, and in previous weeks over these seasons when they both got, ghosts as quarterbacks, they've given massive middle fingers to that group and said, F you, we can coach, just watch.
Yeah, the Steelers against the Browns was not pretty, and the Steelers did an awful lot to try and lose the game. Lucky for them, the Browns did more. But you can't deny that these players still play for Mike Tomlin. They're not giving up. And I think, but based on the outside scrutiny that we've all given Jameis Winston over the years, I think it's remarkable just to see how affected both teams' players were when he got injured. I mean, you saw everyone was going over to make sure he's all right. Now, from what we know, which we don't know an awful lot, but what we surmise and what we are aware of regarding his past, I would imagine Jameis Winston is a colossal arsehole.
No, I think, but this is the thing, you see. I think he's a blundering buffoon who has always been allowed to get away with stuff. However, people like him because he's a blundering buffoon. So we think because he gets away with a load of stuff that he's an arse. And I'm not sure he's an arse. I just think he's one of them, the classic TV show rich spoiled kid who just has always been allowed to get away with stuff, so always has done.
So you think he's Carlton Banks?
Kind of, yeah. Like, I don't... From what I've ascertained, I could well be wrong, by the way, he did steal stuff and he was a dickhead. But I just think he stole stuff because, I'm the quarterback of the FSU Seminoles and, trying to win the Heisman Trophy, and we're trying to win a national title, and I can do what I want because this is my city. Do you know what I mean? Now, I think that it's not proven right by the reception that he got when he was injured, but I think it shows that people don't despise him. Yeah. Which I think it would be easy to assume they did.
Yeah, and obviously, as I say, coming back to that now we have a situation where Taysom Hill has been missing for a few weeks. Call me naive, but I always think multiple week absences for concussion is a very bad sign.
Yeah, it's not good.
But regardless, he's not been there, so he probably comes back in this week against... Are they playing the Falcons? I think they are. Mm-hmm. And he had 2 games against the Falcons last year, and he tore them to pieces.
Yeah, they were on the touchdown show. I spoke to Thomas Willoughby, and he's looking forward to getting absolutely rocked by Taysom Hill.
But we've seen that Trevor Siemian can come in and operate this offense against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they can win with Trevor Siemian. So, yeah, you have to take your hat off to Messrs. Tomlin and Payton. You just worry that you'd assume that they have so much power over personnel. Obviously, they're not, inverted commas, they're not making the picks. But you'd like to think that maybe if you press them, they'd probably wish they'd made better plans at quarterback than what they've done. Absolutely.
Speaking of quarterbacks and making plans, I want to know from you which was your favourite of the backup quarterback performances of last week.
It's so hard
for those who are unaware, that's Mike White, that's Trevor Siemian, that's Geno Smith, I guess, and What was the other one? I've forgotten the other one. But yeah, I assume you're going to say Mike White, so carry on.
I said Mike White because no one gave the Jets a chance, even if Zach Wilson had been there. Mike White was serviceable in relief of Wilson the game before, and Mike White is also the sports editor for BBC Radio Humberside. He's a big 49ers fan. He's a nice bloke. So it's impressive to see him, put down the editing and get up and start tossing spirals. But it's always nice when you see a team like the Jets win something like this. I mean, that's a signature win, the second of the season against an AFC frontrunner. And don't get me wrong, the Bengals blew it to an extent, but the Jets beat them. They didn't hand it. They weren't handed the game. The Jets matched them, came back and won. Geno Smith was just boring. It was just efficient. We don't expect it from Geno, but it was against the Jaguars. And do you have any idea how difficult it is to be so inept at coaching that you draw back-to-back 12 men in the huddle penalties?
It's cool that. By the way, the other, just for those who think that it's a Dallas bias show, you're right, because it was Cooper Rush, Dallas Cowboys quarterback, who beat the Minnesota Vikings.
Mike Zimmer beat the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, true.
By being a terrible game manager and assuming they're not supposed to grant me that timeout if I ask for it if they know I've already done one. It's not so, like Joe Judge, it's always someone else's fault, is it, Mike? Yeah.
Yes. What my favourite thing about the Mike White is, first of all, he throws for 400 yards, and has an average depth of target of 4 yards. And I also like the idea that it's because it's the New York Jets that they get a nice thing, and all it does is cause you angst about something. So in theory, the issue with this is that you're like, well, why has not number 2 pick, who we drafted from BYU, who has all the talent in the world, been able to do anything remotely like this with the offense? Panic, blow into paper bag.
Yeah, I can't imagine what the New York talk radio stations would have been like this week. I guarantee you there was double-digit people saying we should trade Wilson before the deadline and
Correct.
Just roll with Mike White.
Correct, and that's why you don't listen to talk radio, because they only allow morons on. That's it for the news section of the show. Let's get on and do another victory lap for Neil, and let's start with Fancy Darling.
Hello, darling.
Neil, I believe you're now 12-12 after a 2-1 week last week. You picked Carson Wentz. Hilarious that we're going to give you a win for that when he possibly completed one of the worst plays I have ever seen. He then also underthrew his wide receiver so much that he got a PI call and basically got them into overtime. But anyway, he was QB 11. We want you to pick us a QB who you would draft in the first round. That's what QB 11 is. 3 touchdowns, 230 yards, 22.8 pointer to win. Bengals defense. I know we talked about the Jets doing it, but they were defense 12, Neil. So in the first round of defense, 2 sacks, 2 interceptions, and a forced fumble. So we'll give you the win for that as well.
Ultimately, as well, that's what you're after for defenses, because you're not going to shut teams down. They're going to score points, but if you get sacks, you get turnovers. There's where you get your points.
CJ Uzoma, 4 catches for 33 yards, massive fail. Neil, who are we going with this week?
It was always the risk with Uzoma. If he didn't find the end zone, he was just going to be a guy.
Yeah, of course.
So this week, I'm going with Tua, a quarterback. Apparently, he's not being traded, but
well, he's not being traded right now because he can't be. But yeah,
not for the want of trying. He's peaked up and already said, "Oh, I've been vaccinated." Yeah, we know, mate. It's not about you.
But we're not sending you to Green Bay, so it doesn't really matter.
No, Tua the last few weeks has not been bad. He's not been the problem for the Dolphins. Last 3 games, he's averaged 24 fantasy points per game, 275 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. They're playing the Houston Texans this week, who they must every day just look at and say, you gave us all those picks and it looks like we're wasting most of them. The Texans over the last 5 games have allowed 23 fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. They've given up 256 yards and 2.2 passing touchdowns.
Who's next, Neil?
Next, same game. I'll give it one of two as mates. I'm going with Devontae Parker.
Yeah,
now Parker's averaged 8.8 targets per game this season, and he's given us 65.4 yards per outing. A wide receiver against the Houston Texans has at least 7 receptions and a touchdown in 3 of their last 5 games, and the Texans allow 79.3 receiving yards per game to number 1 receivers. There's no doubt about it. I know Jalen Waddle might get more targets, but your number 1 is Parker. He's your outside the numbers clasher. So I think Tua and Parker is a nice little link-up stack pairing that you could go with this week.
And your final pick, Neil?
Final pick. Hey Arnold, it's Dan Arnold. Who knew that his trading from the Panthers to the Jaguars would A, destroy the Carolina Panthers passing attack, and B, elevate him to the pantheon of NFL tight ends? Now, it's not a great matchup on paper because the Jaguars are playing the Buffalo Bills, and the Buffalo Bills are probably the best defense in football. However, they do allow 7.2 yards per attempt when teams target their tight ends against them. Now, we've seen that the Jaguars' offense is Laviska Shenault, who they don't really use, Marvin Jones, who they like to send the ball downfield to, but he doesn't always come down with it, Jamal Swagnew, and Dan Arnold. Well, when they're going to be in comeback mode because the Bills are blowing the doors off, good chance that Arnold will see plenty of targets. He saw 11 last week against the Seahawks in another blowout. So if you're hurting for tight end or you're missing someone because of bye weeks or whatnot, I would go with Dan Arnold.
Love it. Let's move on to Fantasy Loser. Last week, Neil, another win, although I do feel it was like shooting fish in a barrel. You picked David Johnson. He got 1.3 points, 4 rushing yards and 1 catch for -1 yards.
I'll take it.
But a win's a win, right? Do you know what I mean? Doesn't matter who you're beating as long as you win. So, who have you got this week?
This week, it's starting to look like a theme, and this is not homerism. This is just following on from the last 2 weeks. But I believe Mike Williams will finish outside the top 36 wide receivers this week against the Eagles. Williams, as I say, was red hot last 2 weeks. He's done absolutely nothing. The Eagles do not give up the big play. Both these teams literally live in the, no, take what you want underneath. You're not beating us deep. Oh, you want to run the ball? That's fine. Literally, I think both these teams would be happy if their quarterbacks could be limited to about 10 throws in this one.
And one team would be limited to just throwing to one side of the field, right? Is that
exactly
accurate? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But that's the opposite side of the one they drafted in the top 10, yeah? Just trying to make sure I've got this right.
Some may say this. They would be right, but this is only what some are saying.
Okay.
So yeah, I think this shapes up like another game where the main damage is going to get done in the short to intermediate areas, and that's where Keenan Allen makes his living. So I think Williams, if he doesn't score a touchdown, I think he's valueless at the moment. He's just not playing well. So he's going to be a wide receiver 4 or worse.
My fear on this is onefold, and that is that the San Diego Chargers rush defense is truly horrific, and Boston Scott may run a lot, and therefore they may need to throw a lot to catch up. But we shall see.
See, it baffled me last week with Boston Scott actually doing well, because I thought he was only allowed to score fantasy points against the New York Giants, as that's pretty much the only team he's ever done anything against. So I was happy to see it. It meant the game was over a lot quicker. So
yeah, I assume there was some mistake in the scheduling. He didn't realise that he was playing the Detroit Lions. I don't think any of us knew they were playing the Detroit Lions because, on this show and on many shows I listened to, people thought the Detroit Lions were going to win, and I believe it was 46-0.
I did.
Yeah, I think we all did. Right? There we go, I think. And we'll just move on to that by talking about our fantasy predictions bound to go wrong. DeAndre Swift will be running back 1. No, he won't. Means no, he won't. 27 rushing yards and 5 catches for 24 yards, 8.1 points. That, my friends, is a big fat loss. Neil, you picked that Nick Chubb would run for 200 yards against probably one of the best defences in the league. Guess what? He didn't. 61 yards. That'd be a loss. Neil, who have you got as your fancy prediction bound to go wrong this week?
Jordan Love, top 5 fantasy quarterback.
Love it. Love it. I have Aaron Jones over 30 fantasy points. I love the idea that we are both all in on the Packers train as they play the Kansas City Chiefs, who have issues.
The offense does not look good, does it?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's broke. It's done broke. And I hope they can fix it. But we shall see. Before we wrap up, Neil, I just wanted to kind of what we haven't touched on in news this week that happened since our last show is that Calvin Ridley has had to take time away to deal with his mental health. Me and Neil commend that kind of bravery and courage to say, I'm not right here and I need to do something about it. Me and Neil are massive advocates of, don't keep it all in, talk to whoever you need to talk to. And what I would say is, if you are a person listening to this show and you don't believe you have people to talk to, that me and Neil are always available. It's a tweet, it's a DM, it's whatever. We're always here to listen to people and make sure they are okay, because it's okay to not be okay, but you also need people to help you in those situations.
Yeah. As I've said, we don't have the answers.
No.
We probably, almost certainly do not, but we will always listen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the start. It has to start somewhere, and listening, being that voice, being an advocate for someone who is struggling is the best way to start it. Don't try and solve people's problems for them. Just listen.
Correct.
And help guide them to the help they need. But it's okay to not be okay, and it is not weak to speak.
Correct. Neil, before next week, where can people catch you?
Find my stuff on Numberfire, on at Rotoviz. I'll do my Chargers scouting report. They're playing the Eagles this week, obviously, so I'll try not to be too grandiose. This week I won't be giving fancy darlings for Nat. However, I will be going on the show. I'll be getting rung up at about 7:30, so about approaching half time in the first games, just before the witching hour kicks in. I'll be speaking about the fantasy and see what the situation is. So I'm looking forward to that because I've not been on for a while.
Fantastic. As everyone knows, I also run a podcast for the touchdown.co.uk. That was released yesterday. Today's Wednesday. So as a great show last week. This week 5 great guests. Callum Squires, Joe Valenzuela, Tayyip Abu and Thomas Willoughby talking the NFL. Multitude of different things. Browns angst, Falcons angst, best backup performances, and then I had Ollie Hodgkinson to try and explain to me college, trying to explain to me how Ohio State are going to be ranked above Oregon, trying to explain to me why I should watch Liberty versus Ole Miss if my team's rubbish in the NFL. It's a really good listen. I recommend you find it. Touchdown.co.uk. It's a touchdown review. That's it. Short, sharp, concise show this week. Please, everyone, understand the difference between immunised and vaccinated. Don't be tricked out there. There's some people trying to tell you some weird tales. Don't listen to them. We are these top guys, and we are out.